Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. In today's review we're going to be taking a look at the newly released Transformers Kingdom Voyager class Dinobot, arguably the best character to ever come out of the Transformers Beast Wars continuity, and here we finally have his War for Cybertron release, and what a fantastic figure he has turned out to be. Don't get me wrong, the figure is not 100% perfect, although he's leaps and bounds better than any of the previous mass released Dinobot figures. Starting off firstly, of course we do get the collector's card, and I was so glad to see that I actually got a Dinobot collector's card with the Dinobot figure. In my opinion, it would be a lot better for Hasbro to actually package in the correct character card for the figure that you are actually purchasing, but nevertheless, taking a look here at the artwork, you can see that Dinobot there looks fantastic. Of course, we've got Predacon, Dinobot, and of course, if we peel this section here at the top, it should reveal that Dinobot is indeed now a Maximal, and you can see there some fantastic looking artwork, and he definitely does look a little different in this particular piece of artwork than compared to this piece. So shall we be seeing a change in Dinobot in the upcoming Kingdom anime show? Who knows? Dinobot was definitely one of the more complex characters in the original Beast Wars series, so here's hoping that Hasbro and Netflix do him justice in Chapter 3 of the War for Cybertron trilogy. Now, taking a look here at Dinobot, first of all, we shall remove all of his accessories so that we can appreciate the details a lot clearer. You can see here that as far as that Dinobot head sculpt is concerned, in my opinion, this here looks fantastic. Now, out of all of the Beast Wars inspired characters to come out of the Kingdom line, I must say that Dinobot is certainly the one that is a little more stylized than compared to the likes of Black Arachnia and even Optimus Primal, and I believe that to be down to the sole fact that Dinobot does actually have quite a complex design. Even the Masterpiece figure was not 100% perfect, so I think what we have here with the latest Voyager incarnation is definitely a nice balance between the original Beast Wars design and probably some more stylistic elements that we shall be seeing in the upcoming Netflix series. But the head sculpt is by far one of the assets which looks as if it has jumped straight out of that 90s show. You can see they have given him an almost snarling expression, which of course suits the character of Dinobot perfectly, and there is a slew of paint applications here. We have some very menacing red piercing eyes with some darker grey highlights in order to pick out some of the sharper details of the helmet sculpt. We of course do have the blue colour variation here for the faceplate, and I have got to say that the detail for the eyes, nose as well as the cheeks has come out exceptionally well. You can also see that as far as the helmet design is concerned, this too has been detailed impeccably. Even taking a look here at the back of Dinobot's head, they have not skimped out on the sculpt nor paintwork, which is awesome to see. Taking a look here at Dinobot's torso region, arguably one of the most difficult aspects of the design to actually capture, I believe Hasbro and Takara Tomy have done a fantastic job, as they have actually utilised the real Raptor head that we will see in his Dino mode. You can see that this section is indeed the real Dino head, with these two panels here on the sides being faux pieces, although I personally believe that it more than gives you the impression that this is supposed to be Dinobot's Raptor head split into two components, and I love how they have maximised the use of parts and have not just left this section here hanging off the back. We have also got some fantastic texture and paintwork here. This really does look awesome in my opinion. If I had any major critiques with the figure here in his robot mode, it's that some of the proportions do look slightly wonky, most noticeably here with the shoulders. These are way too small compared to how they were on both the Masterpiece figure and even the original character model. These pieces should be a lot larger, and I believe if they were larger, this entire region would look a little more in proportion with one another, as with the shoulders being slightly smaller, it definitely does create a very skinny and almost lanky look here for Dinobot, which was of course not the impression that we got from the original 90s series. But regardless, you can see that as far as the arm design is concerned, the detailing, once again, especially where that texture is concerned, looks fantastic. We have got the Raptor claws, which do become Dinobot's hands, very accurate to how he appeared in the original show. And then as we take a look here towards the crotch plate, we have a bronze highlight over the top, and then taking a look here to the lower region of Dinobot, this is a really detailed area. So we have got some metallic orange paint highlights as well as orange plastic, a colour which is actually very similar to the original Masterpiece figure. We of course have got some fantastic texture and detailing. You can see there that as far as the knee pads are concerned, the detail as well as the paintwork on these two have come out really nicely. And turning our attention here down to the lowest section of the leg, the sculpt work too is impeccable. Turning our attention here down to Dinobot's feet, once again you can see that as far as the sculpt work is concerned, very accurate to how he appeared in the show. Although as we flip around here to the back, you can see that unfortunately we do have this component which does look slightly obtrusive, and this here is really the only area that I would have liked to have seen perhaps compress a little better, but it is a minor critique for what is otherwise a fantastic looking figure. Another critique that I also do have is you can see the Raptor arms are clearly displayed here on the sides. Now, personally, I believe the Raptor arms are too big in both robot mode as well as in Dino mode. If they could have just reduced the size slightly. It maybe would have created a little more of a sleeker design here for the robot mode, but once again, much like the back kibble, that is merely a minor critique for what is otherwise overall a great looking figure. Turning to Dinobot's articulation, he has got a fantastic range here at the head as it is on a ball joint, so he can look up as well as down. It can also tilt side to side and rotate the full 360. We also do get a rotation here at the arm, a hinge joint here out to the side, although if you do utilize the transformation joint, you can exceed that range of motion to get a fantastic degree. We also do get a full 360 here at the bicep, as well as a 90-degree bend there out of the elbow, a full rotation here at the wrist, and due to transformation, the claws here are indeed articulated. We do get a full 360 here at the waist. The legs can kick forwards that far, as well as can kick back that far before they are slightly compromised due to the nature of the design. We also do get a hinge joint, which can allow him to do the split. We have a rotation here at the top, although it can't quite do the full 360 without damaging the pain apps, so I would recommend taking caution whilst actually manipulating this joint. We do get a 90-degree bend here at the knee, and then finally taking a look here at the foot, these here can pivot forwards and backwards, as well as of course rock side to side. So overall, as far as articulation is concerned, considering that Dinobot is merely just a Voyager class, he is by far one of the best articulated figures to come out of the War for Cybertron line so far. Turning to accessories, I am glad to report that Dinobot does indeed include both of his most iconic weapons, that being the sword as well as the spinning tail, which I've always believed to be an almost shield for Dinobot. As far as the sculpt work is concerned for both of these accessories, these have come out very nicely and both look very accurate to their original 90s debut. Here with the sword, we have got a metallic purple coating used for the blade, and I much prefer this than if they were to just opt with normal plastic. As far as actually integrating it here into Dinobot's hand, he does have a 5mm port on both of the palms, and you can simply just take the peg, snap that into place, and of course wrap the fingers around, and that looks so awesome. We can of course split the palm here on the opposite side, take the peg and snap this here into place. Unfortunately, there is no spinning gimmick on this, although as the port is circular, you can of course rotate this to full 360, especially if you were to do stop motion animation. We can of course take the blade here and actually store this within the center of the tail, much like we saw in the original show. If I had any critiques with the accessories, it's that I would have loved to have seen the inclusion of the golden disc, as that was really an accessory which played a vital role in the demise of Dinobot in the original 90s show. However, without its inclusion, here's hoping that Dinobot leaves on a little more of a happier note in the upcoming Netflix series. Here for a Kingdom Beast Wars size comparison, you can see that as far as a Voyager class scale is concerned, Dinobot is definitely a very substantial figure, although if you were going by original Beast Wars scale accuracy, Dinobot should be a little bigger than Optimus Primal than compared to the scale that we actually get here. You can also see that as far as the scaling between him and the leader Megatron is concerned, I believe these figures here look really nice together, and whilst the scale may not be 100% spot on to what we are used to, I definitely don't think he looks too out of place at all. And here for a Dinobot size comparison, we have our new Voyager Kingdom figure compared next to the Masterpiece release, and much like we have seen from pretty much all of the Kingdom Beast Wars characters, the most noticeable difference is as far as the colour scheme is concerned. Kingdom Dinobot has a much darker colour palette when in comparison to the Masterpiece, but it is really here that you can begin to see some of those issues that I had as far as the proportions were concerned. I believe the arms are way too lanky here on the new Kingdom Voyager, and the shoulder pads too are way too small, especially in comparison to the incredibly muscular Masterpiece figure, which is pretty much spot on to how he appeared in the Beast Wars series. Of course, we have got to factor in that we are now dealing with a Voyager class figure, which is significantly cheaper to the Masterpiece, and we also have no idea how he will actually appear on screen. So for all I know, this could actually be accurate to the show. However, if you were going on his original Beast Wars appearance, he is a little lankier in comparison, but that's not to take anything away from Kingdom Dinobot. He is still a fantastic figure for the Voyager class price point. Turning to Dinobot's transformation, to begin with, you're going to want to take the sword and peg this here into the tail. We can then collapse both of these halves and set this here off to the side. Take Dinobot's arms, and you're going to want to rotate these here all the way up to the top, and then rotate here at the upper shoulder so that these hollow spaces are now facing towards Dinobot's head. Of course, repeat the same process here on the opposite side, so rotate that there. That will then allow for clearance so that you can bring the Raptor arms out from the torso, extend that joint, and then rotate these around. Of course, repeat the same process here on the opposite side. So bring this forwards, extend that, and rotate that around. We can then take these halves, bring this entire section up, and this tab will peg into this slot. So just rotate this, snap that into place, and of course repeat the same process here on the opposite side. We can then turn our attention here to this back assembly, just untab it from these tabs, and of course the slots inside this section. Extend this joint here out, and then you're going to want to grip the dino head as well as the torso, and just attach this tab from this slot. We can then lift this entire section up, rotate here at the waist so that we now have a complete section here at the front. Of course, come here to this side, and you're going to want to collapse the arms into these hollow cavities where the torso was. You'll then want to flip this section up just to allow for some clearance. Take the heel spurs, snap them into place, and of course repeat the same process. Bring them down, take these panels here and just pop these sections up, and of course repeat the same process. Take our knee joint and bend this all the way forwards and repeat the same process. And now here we have a slot that is going to peg into this tab. So bring this down once more and just align this up and clip that in there nice and securely. Of course, come here to this side and repeat the exact same process. So just bring this all the way up until that there does snap into place. We can then take Dinobot's robot mode head, hinge this back on the ball joint, and bring this here all the way forwards, and this tab will peg here into this slot. So bring that down and snap that there into place. We now have these two tabs here and here that will peg into these two slots. So bring this section here down, and at the same time you're going to want to slightly split the feet so that we can bring this here all the way up, and these tiny little slots will indeed house the tabs that we have here on Dinobot's feet. So just ensure that everything does stay tabbed. This is by far one of the more finicky aspects of the conversion, at least that I have found. So just make sure that the knee pad stays attached, and then everything should just clip securely there into place. And then for some final touches, just bring this panel down, rotate these joints out, spin the foot around, ensure that everything does stay aligned up appropriately, bring the Raptor arms around. Of course, repeat the same process here on the opposite side. So bring that down, fold out the toes, bring the Raptor arms around, and then of course we can bring back in Dinobot's tail, and this does actually go in a specific way. So you can see how we do have a slight tab there at the top of the circular section to align up with this circular paw and tab here. So just snap that there, and with the transformation now complete, here we have Dinobot fully transformed up into his Raptor alternate mode. Now, despite some of the criticism that this figure is receiving, I've got to be honest and say that I personally do not find this Raptor mode to be that bad at all. The only major issue that I have with it is that some of the colour choices that they have decided to go with are a major departure from the superior colour palette that we got on some of the box art, and it can create for a rather unusual look, although I'll showcase that in this review. Bringing the Raptor mode in here for a closer look, much like I mentioned in his robot mode, I love the skin texturing detailing that this figure has got. In my opinion, this looks incredibly faithful to what we have seen from some of the Jurassic Park and World movies, and they are probably the closest we are ever going to get to actually understanding how velociraptors and dinosaurs looked in general. The proportions as well, for the most part, I believe have turned out rather nicely. There is only really one area that I'm not a huge fan of, and it is here the robot mode feet, but other than that, I think the figure looks really awesome. Taking a look at that head sculpt, the detail as well as the paintwork looks impeccable. You can see how we've got the white highlight here at the top. All of the teeth have been individually sculpted as well as painted. Unfortunately, they have decided to miss out the two front rows of teeth, although I believe that's for safety reasons, as this was also something we saw on the Studio Series 86 movie Grimlock. You can also see some nice detailing there of the tongue, and this too has been painted, and I'm so glad that they did actually add the pupils to Dinobot's eyes, as it would have looked incredibly unusual, much like Cheetor if they were just white eyes. You can also see here we've got some nice detail along with the inclusion of a lighter shade of grey just to pick out some of the sharper details of the sculpt. As we take a look here at the centre of Dinobot's torso, this is definitely where the colour choice in my opinion looks so bizarre. You can see they have decided to cast these in orange plastic. Now initially I did believe this to be perhaps accurate to how his robot mode did appear, as of course these are the hips in robot mode, although upon looking at the masterpiece figure and of course some CGI renders of the original 90s show, these are actually grey, much like we saw on on the box art, so I'm almost certain that we are going to be seeing perhaps a Netflix repaint of this figure, much like we've seen from Siege and Earthrise, that will give us a little more of a toon-accurate colour scheme. As we take a look here at the Velociraptor arms, I've got to be honest and say that the angle they have sculpted these at does look slightly unusual. To me, it looks like the wrist has perhaps broken, as they look very floppy and dangly, and I definitely find them to be a little long as far as their nature is concerned. Perhaps if they were just reduced by 10%, that perhaps would have looked a little better, or if the ball joint could have arched backwards slightly so that you could have actually straightened these out, I think that would not have looked nowhere near as unusual as it does here. But I'm sure I'm just being nitpicky, and many of you will be able to easily excuse this. Taking a look at the actual Velociraptor toes, you can see some fantastic sculpt work, and it does appear as if the toes have been given a lighter wash in order to separate them from the actual skin. Taking a look here at the tail, once again we have a slightly unusual placement here of the sword. I don't necessarily put this down to colour scheme, as in robot mode I think the sword is a perfect colour, but if they could have just made this section slightly longer to conceal this, it probably would not have looked nowhere near as inappropriate as it is showing off here on camera and of course in person. But once again, that is a minor critique for what is for the most part quite a cool looking Raptor mode, and when compared to Black Arachnia, I definitely don't think that he is the worst. I still think that as far as beast modes are concerned, Black Arachnia probably has the worst one so far. But taking a look at Dinobot's articulation, we do get a hinge joint here at the head, which is mainly due to transformation. The jaw can open and close. Unfortunately, there is no form of head rotation, and I do find that to be possible here with this figure, as there is more than enough room. We do get a ball joint here at the arm, which can lift up and down, of course hinge out to the sides. We do get a hinge joint here at the elbow, and we do get ball joints here at the wrists. However, they cannot hinge up, so you are unable to actually straighten this joint out. As far as the legs are concerned, from the hips, they are indeed locked into place due to transformation, although we can utilise the knee joint. And then finally, of course, we do get the hinge joint here at the toe, as well as the rotation, and the tail too is locked into place. So overall, for the most part, I actually find this mode to be quite enjoyable, and it is certainly a nice companion piece to a very awesome looking robot mode. So as far as Voyagers are concerned, I think Dinobot may just be one of my favourites from the line so far. Turning to a very quick Kingdom Beast Wars size comparison, we have Dinobot compared next to Leader T-Rex Megatron, Deluxe Class Cheetor, as well as Voyager Class Optimus Primal. And as far as the scaling is concerned here for beast forms, for the most part I find this works quite well. Of course, it is not spot on to what we got from the show, although when we do see Dinobot actually face against Optimus Primal, I'm pretty certain that the scale here is almost spot on. So I personally don't have much of an issue here with the scale at all. And as far as a Voyager class is concerned, as mentioned, he is by far one of the more substantial that we have gotten, especially when in comparison to Optimus Primal. And so, to conclude this Transformers Kingdom Voyager class Dinobot review, I find myself quite impressed by what Hasbro have offered us here. The figure in robot mode, in my opinion, is really well done and is by far the best mass-produced Dinobot that we have ever gotten at the mass retail price point. His robot mode looks really well done. Of course, there are some proportion issues, but you have got to factor in that this figure does transform into a raptor, so the arms do have to be slightly longer in order to compensate their length in the Dino mode. I find the paintwork to be for the most part really well done. There are some colour choices that I do find quite unusual for robot mode, which I would have liked to have seen a little more cartoon accurate, but for the most part I find the colours in the robot mode work quite nicely. The articulation for a Voyager class has got to be one of the best that we've seen from the Kingdom line so far. He's so well articulated, especially where the foot articulation is concerned. We get pivot forwards and backwards as well as side to side. The arms are loaded with joints. We of course have a fantastic range of motion out of that ball joint, and as far as the accessories are concerned, Dinobot comes with pretty much everything I would want. Of course, I would have loved to have seen the golden disc, although seeing as we never saw a release of the Allspark from the Siege or Earthrise line, I find it unlikely that we will ever get a Kingdom golden disc. But turning to the transformation is really fun and enjoyable, and is by far very refreshing when compared to some of the other Dinobots, and is leaps and bounds more enjoyable than compared to the Masterpiece. As we take a look at his Raptor mode, despite some of the critiques that I do have of it, for the most part as well, I find it to be really well executed. Of course, there are some discrepancies as far as the overall sculpt is concerned, but I think they've done a really good job. I really only have two major critiques with him in Dino mode, the first being that the wrists do appear to be broken, so maybe if they could have been slightly shorter in length and that the ball joint could have hinged backwards, that could have amplified his appearance. And I have no idea as to why the hips are coloured in orange, which does definitely stand out from the mostly darker colour palette. overall, if you are a fan of Transformers Kingdom, Beast Wars, or the War for Cybertron trilogy, Dinobot is by far a great entry into this line and is one of my favourite characters from the original 90s show, which is perhaps why I love this figure so much. But believe me, he is definitely a great rendition. I would love to know down in the comment section below what you think of this figure. Also, be sure to let me know on whether or not you shall be adding him to your collection, and be sure to let me know on what you thought of this review. I thank you all for watching, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.